right, friends, today we're going to talk about abs, more specifically core training, whether or not it's a waste of time, whether or not it is beneficial. Let's get into it. So before we get into what my core training specifically looks like and whether or not you should be implementing this regularly or not, I think having a basic understanding as to what the core actually is. So the core is known as the lumbopelvic hip complex. A lot of people mistaken the core for your abdominal musculature, but there's actually a lot more to it than that. It includes the diaphragm, the abdominal muscles, the lumbar spine, gluteal muscles, the pelvic floor, and hip muscles. That's a lot to consider. So when we are specifically trying to decide if we should train our core or not, we have to understand what we're trying to accomplish. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to refer to what most people are typically looking to train, which is of course your abdominal muscles. And that's where most people are typically referring to the erectus abdominis and the obliques. So even though there is a lot more involved in regards to your core, for the rest of the video, I'm still going to be referring to the term core, but more specifically, I'm referring to your erectus abdominis and your obliques. So me personally, I do train my core quite frequently, probably 2 to 3 times a week. I am going to get into specific exercises a little bit more later in this video, but let's just talk about why, because there often can be a lot of misconception in regards to whether or not you should train your core, but there are some benefits that you need to consider. So it actually does improve your midsection aesthetics. Even though your genetics are predetermined and play a significant role in that, you can still improve the overall aesthetics and overall look of your midsection. Other benefits include improvement to your compound movements. It does reduce the risk of injury, and it does reduce the risk of low back pain. So regardless of which camp you are in, of whether or not you can improve the overall look and the overall appearance of your abdominals, regardless of that, it's still important to actually have a strong core. And the reason for that is because obviously if you don't have a strong core, say you're doing a compound movement like a back squat, quite often you can increase your risk of lower back injuries if you lose core stability. So having a strong core is extremely important when you are under heavy load, so that way you can mitigate any injuries during your prolonged lifting career. So while everyone's skeletal structure and musculature is completely different, that doesn't mean that you can't improve the overall appearance of your abdominals. So one's genetic structure is predetermined. You can't change the overall look and appearance of what you currently have. For example, some people have more transverse bands of connective tissue in comparison to other people. This is why specifically some people will appear to have an 8-pack while other people appear to have a 4-pack. That is strictly based on genetics, but that doesn't mean that you can't enhance the overall appearance of what you currently have. That's where prioritizing resistance training comes into play, because it is going to help maximize one's muscular development. Like anything else, it's still a muscle, and you can improve the overall look of what you genetically have. So when you are selecting specific exercises, before we get into that, it's very important to ensure that you're still applying a progressive overload strategy. So we've talked about this in previous videos, right? Where progressive overload is the act of doing more over time, whether that be adding more weight, doing more reps, doing more sets, improving your form and technique. These are all different strategies of achieving progressive overload. You still want to apply the same mentality, the same strategy with your core training. So now that we know that, hey, it doesn't hurt to actually incorporate core training into your routine, regardless if you're trying to improve the overall appearance and aesthetics of your midsection. If you are actively lifting weights, it's still extremely important to ensure that you have a strong core. core. Like I previously mentioned, reducing the risk of injury, reducing the risk of lower back pain. There's actually research to show that those with chronic back pain often see it reduced when it comes to incorporating their core training. So it doesn't hurt. So what exercises should you do? Well, like I said, what we typically are trying to target if you are looking to improve the overall appearance, firstly, we want to try to find movements that involve spinal flexion. So that's what's going to allow us to really target the rectus abdominis. And I wouldn't overthink what exercises you do specifically. I would try to find 2 to 3 exercises that you as an individual enjoy and that you know you can actually progress with. In order to target your obliques, trying to do specific rotations is another great way to target that given area. And then lastly, isometric holds are very important for targeting the overall core musculature. All right, so spinal flexion, right? That's what's going to really target our rectus abdominis. So spinal flexion are movements like crunches, reverse crunches, rope crunches. All of these different exercises are prioritizing spinal flexion. So if you don't train your core a whole heck of a lot, maybe just starting off with the basic crunch is a really good starting point for you. And if maybe you can only do 3 sets of 10, maybe 2 sets of 8, that's a good starting point for you. Eventually, you want to progress from there, where maybe elevating your feet is a really great way to progress from there. So I'm still focusing on prioritizing spinal flexion, regardless if my feet are up or down. If we do reverse crunches, so if you hold on to something, we're still prioritizing spinal flexion here in order to still target our rectus abdominis. So there are a lot of great exercises. They all involve the same movement patterns. If you do like a rope, I'll set it up for you here. Another great option is to do rope crunches. That's where you'd have a rope on a cable system. Again, we're gonna focus on prioritizing spinal flexion. So we wanna make sure our hips and our knees aren't moving, and we're just focusing on that crunch. Obviously, when I'm lying down on the ground, it's the exact same movement pattern, but as I get better and as my core gets stronger and stronger, I can progress from lying on the ground, doing just basic crunches, and start to add load and add weight, which is gonna help just with that overall aesthetics and that overall prominent appearance that we're looking for. All right, well, what about our obliques? Remember, we talked about doing rotations. So a good starting point for that is just to hold on to like a dumbbell. You can sit with your feet on the ground, and we're just gonna rotate back and forth like this, making sure that our trunk is moving, but our hips are staying forward. So this is a good starting point for people who don't do a whole heck of a lot of rotations, not really focusing on their obliques. As that gets easier in time, you can focus on elevating your feet. Maybe don't hold on to a weight right away, focusing on that rotation as well. And then again, as you get stronger and stronger, hold on to a weight. And that's how you can focus on progressing an exercise to really target your obliques. All right, lastly here is to focus on isometrics. Isometrics are where nothing is moving. You're focusing on doing specific holds. So specific movements may include things like doing a plank, a forward plank, a side plank. Palloff presses are a great one for both the rectus abdominis and the obliques, just because it is an anti-rotation movement. I'll show you that one shortly, but of course, isometrics. You can do some planks where you focus on holding like this. As you progress from there, maybe you can start holding it for like over 2 minutes. You can start to do 3-limb planks, 2-limb planks, start to focus on doing side planks. So 2-limb planks is where you lift one of your limbs up. So maybe your back foot, for example. 3-limb planks is where you lift 2 of them up. So obviously you want to counterbalance. So maybe one of your arms forward, your back leg up. Those are 2-limb planks. So again, that's how you would progress as you get stronger and stronger over time. Last isometric exercise I'm going to show you is the Palloff press. The Towel off press is where, like I said, it's an anti-rotation isometric hold. So you're gonna have the cable just in line with your belly button. You're gonna take a few steps away from the cable to pull the slack out of the cable, keeping your feet pretty close together. You know, typically about a shoulder width distance is gonna be beneficial. The wider you are, the less you're gonna feel in the actual area we're trying to target. So what you're trying to do here is keep your hips as well as your shoulders maintained forward, and we're gonna push the cable away from us. And what is happening here is our body wants to twist as the cable gets further away from our body. So we wanna maintain a nice hold so that way none of our joints are moving except our elbow is being extended forward, and that's it. So we're gonna bring it towards our belly button, and I'm gonna extend my elbows forward, keep my shoulders back, and make sure that my body is staying upright and I'm not twisting whatsoever. Right now, if I lose stability, the cable is wanting me to twist like this. So you can see how that's gonna work your obliques, right? So you wanna make sure that you're nice and tall, upright, and nothing else but your elbows extending are moving. Everything else is staying upright. So you would do that on both sides. All right, I'm gonna do a bonus isometric for you all just because it is my staple as of right now. It's my go-to and it's pretty friggin' tough. That is the hollow body. So that's when you come down like this. This is an isometric hold. You're gonna have your arms over your head and you're going to bring your head off of the ground and your legs off of the ground as well. And you're gonna focus on holding, making sure that that lower back is staying glued to the ground for as long as possible. So that's a pretty tough one. A good regression for that is to not have your hands overhead. So just keep your hands down and focus on elevating your legs. And then eventually you can bring your arms up, or you can bend your knees in, arms up, and then hold up like this. So that's your isometric. And eventually, as you get stronger and stronger, that's when you can focus on extending your knees outwards. So that's typically how I would prioritize my core training program. You can do all of your core training in one workout, or you can sprinkle it in throughout the week. Me personally, I actually don't enjoy training my core, so I know myself. I will only prioritize one exercise at a time. So I have 3 exercises that I typically do. 1 spinal flexion movement. So right now I'm doing the rope cable crunches, and then later on during the week I will do a rotation related exercise. So typically Russian twists are a good go-to. And then the third is gonna be an isometric hold. Like I showed you, that is the hollow body. So 3 exercises a week. You can do those all in one workout, or you can do 1 exercise at the end of like your back day on Monday, the 2nd exercise on Wednesday, and then the 3rd exercise on Friday. It doesn't really matter as long as you are able to ensure that you're prioritizing progressive overload. So knowing yourself is extremely important. So what I've done for you guys, because there are a lot of exercises out there and you see something cool and it's like, oh, I wish I could do that, like a hanging leg raise, for example. Well, your core might not be strong enough in order to do that. So what I've done is I've taken these 3 categories, so spinal flexion, rotations, and isometric holds, and I've listed out various exercises from beginner all the way up to advanced. So you know what exercises you can improve upon if you want to get up to doing some of those cooler movement patterns, but you're not quite ready yet. What are some exercises that you can do before that to actually strengthen that given area? So eventually you can do some of those cooler, more complicated exercises. At the end of the day, it's important to learn to walk before you run, so don't skip out on mastering the fundamentals. You can see the document down in the description below. No strings attached. You just hit the download button and it is free, available for you. So hopefully you guys found that helpful. Let me know if you have any questions with any of the movement patterns, and happy core training.